Well, hello and a very warm welcome to this first panel of our September Dial Global Virtual Summit. The time to take action is now. I feel as though there's a song in that or something, but maybe we'll join in later on. But this panel is titled CEO Activists Driving Change. My name is Rita Clifton. I'm a portfolio chair and board director of various organisations, and one of my roles is as deputy chair of the John Lewis Partnership. I'm joined today by three other extraordinary and very supportive leaders whom I'm delighted to welcome to this Dial Global virtual stage. And they are Andrew Denton, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Alfa Financial Software, Sharon Rice-Oxley, the co-founder of Q5, which is an organisational change firm, and also Joe Marshall, who is Country Service Line Leader and Board Member at IPSOS. Hello and welcome, and more introductions I know in just a moment. I hope that all of us during the course of this panel will be hearing how leading organisations have come together to support the CEO Activist Pledge, moving the dial on diversity. I know that Layla's already made the joke about the fact that the pun is, of course, intended there. Dial Global is calling on all organisations to sign up to their 4-goal pledge on diversity, inclusion, belonging and equity. So I hope that we'll be hearing about this panel's vision and also how other outstanding leaders are joining them in this movement and why. But before we get into the detail of that discussion, it'd be great to learn a little bit more about our panelists today and why they're so passionate about this subject of diversity, inclusion and belonging. So if I can ask each of the panel members to introduce themselves on a sort of bit of a "this is your life" sort of thing in a minute, as in do it in 1 minute, I think I was going to say. And Andrew, I was going to come to you first, if I may. I did happen to notice that you seem to be a bit of a dog lover on your social media feed. And I think actually you talked about dogs being the two dogs being 8-legged decompression chambers, which is a really unique take. So Andrew, please take it away. Your 1 minute, please, of This Is Your Life.
Okay, thanks, Rita. Andrew Denton, as people have said, I have the privilege of leading Alfa Financial Software. 2 kids, 1 extra kid that I've inherited, 2 dogs, combined weight 85 kilos, and a really irritating cat who's banished upstairs thanks to the dog. Alfa Financial Software is a group of nearly 450 amazing people. We deliver leading edge software across 37 countries in 5 continents, from London, Detroit, Dallas, Sydney and Auckland. And we are proud to be listed on the London Stock Exchange. There aren't too many of us tech companies left. Diversity, I've answered this question a few times before. Why DIB is important to me? 3 reasons. First thing is the right thing is the right thing. Bigotry, prejudice, oppression and disadvantage that falls behind them are just straight up and down wrong. At a personal level, I don't want to live and work in a monochromatic society. And the business imperative, I run an organization that is absolutely dependent on our talent being able to turn up, thrive and innovate, which needs them to feel included, needs them to feel that they belong, and it needs diversity to work to its maximum potential. So yeah, that's me, and that's why I'm here.
Great stuff. Thank you very much indeed. Some great thoughts and phrases there already. If I can now come on to you, Sharon, I couldn't find any dogs actually on your social media feed, but I did notice that you work with many different and very interesting organisations. So it'd be great just to hear a little bit about you and your background.
Thank you, Rita, and thank you for inviting me to join the panel. I feel a bit of responsibility as we're the first panel today to kick things off well, which I'm sure we will. So I lead Q5. I'm one of the partners and co-founders of Q5, which, as you said, Rita, we're an global organisational change consultancy. So we're a professional services organisation. We've got a team of 300 consultants across the globe. We work with many clients a year, and we are all about helping people think about their own organizational health inside our clients. So the theme of inclusion and belonging and diversity threads through all of the work that we do with our clients. It might be helping them set a strategy that fully assimilates all the things they need to do in this space. It might be about shaping their organization so that the roles and the structure and the size encourage inclusion and belonging and diversity, or it might be developing their people and leaders. So every day we are looking after that type of work with our clients. Me personally, I'm a professional. I've been working for 30 years as a consultant, so I'm delighted that the agenda is really coming to the fore now. Many people would say it might be too, it's long overdue. But I'm delighted that we're seeing the depth and the passion and the focus in society on this topic. I've got 3 children. Personally, I want to make sure that they can bring their true selves to work in the future, that they can create, to be the best that they can be in their working environment. And I've had myself in my career some amazing sponsors, some people that have looked after me and encouraged me to be the best I can be. And so that's what I'm passionate about. Anybody that knows me, has worked with me either in Q5 or in my clients, will know that that's what's really important to me personally, to build that platform for others.
Fantastic, thank you. And very inspiring thoughts there too. Jo, if I could please come to you. Again, no real dogs, but I do see that you're an expert in the egg and spoon race. Is that right? I'm not quite sure how you can spin that into this particular, but anyway, I'll leave it up to you on that one.
I did not think I was going to get asked about that, so thank you. Yes, that was a team event that we all did, and we had a sports day for the summer, which was a really good thing to do to get everyone together. So yes, thank you, Rita. So my name's Jo. I lead a couple of divisions for IPSOS, the market research company. IPSOS is a French company that we exist in 80 markets worldwide. We have nearly 20,000 employees, and we're all about helping our clients understand business, markets, society. So as part of that, we do a lot of work understanding consumer opinion, consumer needs, citizen opinion. And the diversity of the work that we do and the diversity of the audiences that we're researching means that it creates a really strong and powerful need actually for a real understanding of the lived experiences. If we can understand consumers and citizens' lived experiences, then we're going to give our clients much better insights, much better advice, much better consultancy. So having a diverse workforce is actually a business imperative for us. It enables us to understand our markets much better and our consumers much better. So there's a real kind of business need for that and commercial imperative, as well as everything that Andrew said about that this is just the right thing to do. I've been at IPSOS for 20 years now, far too long, quite rare to be in an organisation that long. I'm the executive sponsor for a number of diversity and inclusion networks, including our REACH, Race, Ethnicity and Cultural Heritage Network. Fantastic to work with a group of just really passionate people. I live in West London, 2 kids, one who is autistic. So neurodiversity is, again, a big passion of mine, and making sure my son can grow up and thrive and work in an environment in an inclusive environment where he has a sense of belonging. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to the panel today, and I'm sure we'll cover a lot of good and interesting topics. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. I think what was also really powerful about those introductions is the blend between personal commitment and sort of professional action, which I guess is exactly what we want to see, more humanity in organisations and at the top of businesses of all kinds. And on this blend of personal and professional, Sharon, I could just come to you, just to talk maybe a little bit more. Was there a particular moment? I mean, in terms of your personal commitment and care about this topic, was there a particular moment or period of time that really brought these issues home to you on a personal front? And secondly, from a professional point of view, in terms of your major actions on, diversity, inclusion, and belonging and equity over this year, what have the major initiatives been?
Sure. Yes, two big questions. Thank you, Rita. I mean, I think to your first question about was there a moment for me? I think, I'm going to say the dreaded J word, the journey word. I don't think for me personally in my career, there was one moment. I think it's been many moments, both good and bad, that have made me utterly passionate about this. And I think often when you're going through your early years in your career, you don't realize that you're having some of those. You don't even realize you're having some of those experiences. It's not until you kind of look back and assess where you've come. And then when you're in a leadership position, thinking about the environment that you want to create yourself. So I don't think there was one moment. I think I had some powerful people that helped me think, that made me feel comfortable about being myself in my career. I was at Accenture for a fair few years at the early stages of my career, and I had a number of sponsors there who were kind of happy for me to bring my whole self to work, and that hadn't always been the case. And so as I've become a leader in my own right in leading Q5, that is something that I hold on to very, very dear. And that takes a lot of leadership time and attention. You can't rush these conversations. You have to get to know people. If you truly believe in people bringing their whole selves to work, you have to find time to understand them, to make sure that they feel psychologically safe to have the conversation with you as a leader. So just to turn then to Q5 and some of the things that we've been doing. And I think I'm going to try and talk really practically about some of the initiatives we've got, because I think sometimes we can talk in really sort of emotional and big terms about the topic, and it's difficult for people to know where to get started. So I was going to try and highlight a few kind of specific things we're doing. It is a journey for us. We're not perfect. Nobody's perfect in this, of course. And it's a journey that we've been on for a while. We set Q5 up 14 years ago, and we've always put people at the heart of our business. We are a people business, so they've always been at the heart, and we've matured along that journey. So we have a vibrant D&I community that's made up of team members across the globe. And this group are there, they're self-selecting to a certain extent, but they are there to challenge us as leaders of Q5 about what's working, what's not working, what we might need to change. And they're responsible for creating our annual plan of activity in Q5, and they run our annual D&I survey. And I thought I might just share Q5's goals this year on inclusion. We've got 5 goals to ensure all of our people feel safe and supported, to make sure all Q5ers understand their role in creating an inclusive environment, to integrate diversity and inclusion into how we operate day to day, to push our conversations further so that leads to action, and 5th, to continue to grow and retain a diverse pipeline of talent. And those were created by the community for the community in Q5. And if you're okay for me to keep going, Rita, I'll just pull out a few specifics around, therefore, what are we doing to deliver those goals? We use offsites to bring our team together, because as a professional services consulting team, we face out to our clients. We're out in the client site. Now that the pandemic is over, we're able to get back more. So the teams can be very disparate. And so we use our offsites to bring people back together in the Q5 environment. And this year in March, when we were together, team of 200 in Edinburgh, we made inclusion an absolute focus of that offsite. And we did some storytelling in the run-up to the offsite around everybody, different levels of the organisation, myself included. We recorded some digital stories about times in our life when we had felt included or excluded, and how that had made us feel, and what we would have liked to have been different, what we learned from that. And that culminated in a conversation for the 200 people in our offsite in Edinburgh around what had they learned from that. What did they want to probe? What did they want to understand more? What did they want to ask individual team members? And we culminated in creating a charter called It's Okay, It's Not Okay for Q5. And that's a set of guidelines, very simple, 5 things it's okay to feel and do, and 5 things it's not okay to feel and do, that we created as a team. And we've embedded that in our induction, our performance management, and we use it internally for teams, but we're also starting to use that with our clients, because again, as a professional services firm, there's a boundary there. We're not only about thinking about inclusion for our teams inside Q5, but how they integrate with the client team. So that, and we'll continue the theme of that. We have an offsite coming up next week where we'll continue that theme. Another very specific thing we did this year in support of those goals that I described was we've introduced an anonymous integrity line. We hadn't had that before. We always hope as leaders that we encourage openness, transparency, that we're very available to our team. But it was clear that, that wasn't always the case. And so I think it's a kind of give, and you've got to have a place for the team to go if they don't feel comfortable. I always hope they would, but if they don't, somewhere that they can go and report or share concerns. And for me, success of that line will be that we don't use it. We'll be paying for it, but we're not using it. So we'll see. We'll know in a few months where we've got to on that. And then one more, and then I'll stop talking so that Andrew and Joe can come in. We've been running a courageous conversation series for a couple of years now. Maybe this is our 3rd year, where we invite, again, we bring the team together over informal lunches, and we sometimes bring an external speaker in, or we ask people within the team with their lived experience to share their perspectives on a whole range of different topics. And the next sort of few months, we'll be looking at women's health. I'm hosting a courageous conversation on menopause. We will be addressing race around the Black History Month, and then we'll be moving on to mental health. And so we're running those in the background constantly to educate and build our knowledge and experience. And we need to get a little bit better about translating into action from those conversations, but we're learning as we go. So I could keep going, but I feel I should stop and let Joe and Andrew come in, Rita.
Thank you very much. I mean, I think there were really important themes there, about practical actions, engaging people, further across the organisation, setting the agenda. It's not sort of a grand top-down sort of approach. I think that the other thing you said was about, setting a role model, creating a safe environment, all of those things that really do create space for people to discuss, to feel that they can be themselves, etc. And I think we can all remember times in our working careers where we've had someone who encouraged that in ourselves, and it shows the power and agency, I guess, that we've all individually got. So, Andrew, I'm going to come to you. I mean, any other things that particularly resonate maybe on that question from what Sharon was saying and some of the actions that you're taking? And is it more challenging to do that in a publicly quoted company where you've got so many other pressures?
Shouldn't be, should it? I think in terms of what Sharon said, a few things resonated in a massive way with me. I think the thing to maybe put some fairy lights and a big spotlight on and put into bold italic is this idea that we're all on a journey. Lots of people are watching us, so perhaps we have a responsibility as the first group just to make it clear to everybody who's tuning in and engaging with this virtual conference that those people that are talking out at them are not on a pedestal. We are all on a journey. Nobody's perfect. We've all got things that we need to do, things that we like, things that we don't like. And it's super important to understand that. Otherwise, you never take the first step. Employee resource groups absolutely resonates with me. I've gone into bat with Layla on this a couple of times before, actually. I really don't like the term. I don't like the term resource used with employees, but I appreciate it is the accepted turn of phrase. We call them communities. The thing I would add to Rita, Sharon's excellent narrative on the subject is that it's really important that with those kind of groups, communities, they're heavily sponsored from a top-down perspective. And I know that Joe talked about his sponsorship of groups within IPSOS. But that sponsorship is to create the time and the space and the ability to take bottom-up action so that people can feel a sense of ownership. And before I outstay my welcome on this particular point, on the being a public company, I think there's a lot of mystique around that. Actually, I think, despite the fact it gives me the slight ick, as my daughters would say, the idea that one can sort of regulate and legislate your way to doing the right thing. We're all now under a lot of pressure to do the right thing from an ESG perspective anyway. It so happens that I'm fortunate enough to have a board who are very proud of our corporate voice and our culture of inclusion and belonging and social conscience. So actually, for me, it's pretty easy because I know I've got the backing of the board and indeed the major shareholders in terms of being an activist.
Thanks very much, Andrew. A couple of really crucially important things here about visible sponsorship from the top, even though the agenda is often set and some of the priorities emerge from right across the organisation. I love that. Gives me a slight ick. I think I'm going to mark that down as a technical term. But I think that question about having the right board and having the right board support, I mean, we can't always choose exactly who we work with, but that does feel to be very important. And at least it's a very high profile, high visibility agenda now, quite rightly, which adds pride as well as visibility. So thank you very much for that. Joe, if I could please come to you, any things that would resonate from what's been said so far, and what practical initiatives that you're undertaking at IPSOS?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this very much resonated. I mean, for me, it was very powerful. This idea of the journey is absolutely right. I mean, personally, for me, there were a couple of very powerful moments that I think just accelerated the need for change, and these were things that didn't even happen in the business world. The murder of George Floyd, for example, was really lit a fire under these issues. And certainly for our team members, it was a real moment where we needed to take stock of what was happening, and we needed to do something, to affect positive change in society. And so that I think that was something. We had our employee networks for a number of years, but I think that really accelerated the pace of change and accelerated the need for change as well. And so I think the employee networks, as we call them, are really, really important. I think that point about sponsorship is critical. I think it's important that our employee networks can affect change. I mean, we have a number of employee networks now around different facets of diversity and inclusion, but I think the governance that those networks have, the sponsorship that they have, their ability to influence policy within an organization, HR practice, people practice is really vital. And one of the, there's a number of things that I'm really proud of that our employee networks have influence within IPSOS. One of them is our paternity and maternity leave policies. So our gender balance network was really influential in bringing in a matched paternity and maternity leave policy. We were one of the first organizations to do that, whereby male employees essentially get pretty much the same paternity leave as females do for maternity leave, and it just really encourages our male employees to take more responsibility for those important stages of family life, and not feel like they can't take responsibility as well. And it was something that I think initially anyway some people took a bit of time getting their head around it. But I think, you know, pieces like that, quite radical, quite progressive, are really, really important for driving change. We've got sponsorship programs, we've got talent development programs. We'll talk about those later, I'm sure. I think another area that I'm particularly passionate about, and I think our networks have made a big influence on, is in with apprenticeships as well. So bringing in team members from different social backgrounds as well. Certainly in the professional services world, we need to do a lot better there. But our apprentice scheme is thriving. We're going to be growing that, probably doubling that next year. And we found it's worked really, really well. So I think that role of the networks and how they can really influence the practices within an organization to really make change happen on the ground is important, because that is what our team members are wanting now. It's not just about talk, it's about action, and it's about moving the dial.
Thank you very much for also just to reinforce the theme of this panel, which is, you know, grand theories and policies are one thing, but actually it's what you do, of course, as we know, that really counts. And very interesting point that about, you know, paternity and maternity leave. I found that in many of the organisations I'm involved with, and actually having just recently become a grandmother. Yes, I've said it now. Yes, what I've noticed is that actually, you know, my daughter and my son-in-law have a very different sort of, you know, home management setup and attitude, certainly than I saw in my career. So that's a lot to be appreciated. I think that, you know, it's very good sometimes to recognise some of the changes that have happened. Okay, next question. Thank you very much for that. Really great sort of start and opening gambits here. And I think some of these sort of topics we've already raised, but I mean, in terms of why you feel, Andrew, if I could come to you on this one, why you believe and indeed can demonstrate that it's so important for other organisations or organisations of all kinds to get involved and take a stance on inclusion right now. Are there any other things that you might add, you know, to help people, you know, listening into this for their own organisations? Andrew, you're on mute.
Somebody had to be the first to do it, and it was always going to be the tech guy, wasn't it?
We ought to have a little mug holding up saying you're on mute so that we could do sort of
gosh. Yeah, exactly right. There must be something in the. I'll probably give away a bit of our corporate law now, but we have a sign for conferences that I'm not going to share with anybody that says I'm in a tricky, boring conversation. Get me out of it. So it should be one of those.
Don't be looking out for that. Actually, now you've mentioned it, that secret code. Anyway, there's nothing boring about this.
I'm sworn to secrecy. I think you pulled out two quite important themes there. One of them was taking a stance, which is activism. And let's talk about that perhaps at a macro level. And the other one is why now. And I think I think from the way I feel about it, and perhaps the way Alfa feels about it, Joe pointed to a really important tipping point that I think resonates with a lot of us, which was the murder of George Floyd, of course. At a personal level, my involvement with charity and activism groups was money or zero before the murder of George Floyd, and today I was just totting them up as we were speaking that I'm involved in 5 groups. So for a lot of people, I think that was a call to action for activism. There's kind of like a pre and post murder of George Floyd, and the post realization, I think, is part of this, a far more macro version of the sponsorship we've been talking about, which is that unless the combination of the various white, cis, straight, male privileges actually speak out and take action, then nothing's very likely to change. Never mind equality. I think what we're going for here is equity, and there's definitely going to be no equity. So I've talked about having air cover from a board level. And this is really important because we need to make decisions for reasons of morality and not just about business. So from that perspective, Alfa's an activist business. It's my character, my organization's character. And organizations do and need to have a personality. Probably Sharon sees that every day in all of the great change work that she does. I think activism is important. Clarity of position is important. I've been in a few rows with people recently about representing and speaking up and why it's important to get involved and to take a stance and to say something. And it's important for people, in my experience, who identify with one or more facets of diversity to know that their employer's viewpoint on issues that are profoundly important to them. And on that basis, we get more out of the workforce. So, summary, activism and speaking out is important. It's right. It's morally right. And it makes us a better business. Makes us a better business anyway. So why wouldn't you do it? So then the second leg of your question is why now? So let's pick on maybe one target for activism where certainly Joe and I are aligned, and probably all of us are to an extent aligned, that the George Floyd murder, we're 1 year on from that now. So this is activism with regard to racism, institutional racism, systemic racism. What's actually really changed? Digging into something else that's important to me apart from dogs, which is the music of Marvin Gaye, but the lyrics of What's Going On are now 50 years old and they still resonate. What's all that about? So George Floyd was murdered, people spoke up, then people shut up, and now we've got no further forward. And the story's being repeated, the narrative's being repeated in a very similar way, actually, across a myriad facets of diversity and intersectionalities. So for me, my position, my stance, and I think the stance should be that sustainable change requires those white, cis, straight, male, privileged people to speak out and take action. It's important to take a stance. Now's the time to take a stance, but then now's always the time to take a stance. And a good way that you can do that, I'll give a quick advert, is by signing up to the CEO Activist Pledge, which makes it very clear that you are taking a stance.
Fantastic. Thank you, Andrew. A great plug there, but actually, in all seriousness, I think there were some fantastically powerful points there about being an activist business. Why can't most businesses, indeed all businesses, see themselves as activist citizens in some way, shape or form? I mean, I'm tempted to write a book about how businesses can change the world. That's not necessarily how their role is seen, but when we see what's happening with governments and stresses between nations and countries, many businesses, you sit across borders, don't you? You can have an impact across borders in a way that it's difficult sometimes for governments to have that. And when you put brands and the relationship that brands, of course, have with their own customers, whether B2B or B2C, I think it's potentially energizing, exciting, and a source of great pride, isn't it, to really kind of, I guess, engage, the talent and the skills in your workforce to really, really make a huge difference. And we'll come back to that, the role of business maybe in general, and why some businesses are doing it and some not. Thank you. Could I maybe come to Joe? Is there anything else you'd like to add just in terms of initiatives that you're taking? Anything else again that resonated there?
Well, I really like, the idea of CEO activism and getting more organizations on board with this, because I think there's just going to be a virtuous benefit of the more organizations that come on board, the more momentum that's going to be behind this, the more change that can be affected. And the what we want is for this mindset, the sort of activist mindset, to be the normal mindset, to be the mindset that everyone has. And what we're doing is I think really interesting. We've started to link up now with other organizations, some of which are clients of ours at IPSOS, some of which are media partners, but actually start to bring together networks from across organizations and actually share ideas, sharing best practice. We did a really good event actually for the anniversary of George Floyd's murder with the FT, where we got team members and senior leadership from the FT and IPSOS to reflect on George Floyd's murder, to talk about and share what we're doing to try and move the dial on equity and inclusion and diversity. And it was a really, really good session. And actually, we got some really good challenges actually from team members that were involved in that session on what more we can do. And I think we wouldn't have had that effect if we hadn't have got together with another organization to do that. So I think there's benefits there. We're actually running another one for Black History Month with Vodafone as well, in partnership with Vodafone, and we're expecting that to be, a really, really good session too. So I like this idea of creating, virtuous momentum around it, getting more and more organizations on board with it, and then using that to drive change in the wider economy. Because just one business or a handful of businesses like ours aren't going to make that real difference. And also, of course, there are the importance of doing the right thing is critical. But this idea that if you want to exist and be successful as an organization, this imperative that you need to be seen as progressive, you need to be seen to be pushing the dial on diversity and inclusion. There was some great research, I think, from maybe McKinsey, which showed that organizations with a more diverse board have better performance, better commercial performance, better share performance.
I think we've all used that, haven't we?
Indeed.
Very
I'm sure
strongly.
we have.
And it's McKinsey, so it must be right. Yes.
Absolutely. But yes, so I think the need is there, the imperative is there, and I just think we need to get more organizations on board. Perfect.
Thank you very much. I think that one thing that does popped out on the activist front, and this leads us, I think, into our sort of third and final question, is, talking about being an activist and being very visible on these issues, as all of you are, and indeed, I think we'd like to see every leader and organisation becoming a leader activist, is sometimes the fear that by putting yourselves out there, by becoming visible, you're asking to be punched. Whether by media commentary or criticism or etc. So maybe just reflecting on that in the last section, because what I really love, and Joe, maybe you could kick this one off, is your advice to future leaders. What sort of advice would you give to future leaders to act now? What advice on what they might prioritise and indeed do?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think that for me, being a researcher as well, measuring and tracking progress is absolutely vital. So understanding where the organization is from a diversity, inclusion, equity, belonging perspective is vital. So obviously we publish the gender pay gap. We also publish an ethnicity pay gap as well. I hope in the future we will also be looking at social inclusion pay gaps as well. And I'm really hopeful that the government is going to start making these kind of things mandatory for organizations. Gender is currently mandatory, but I would certainly like to see that broadened out, because for me, closing those pay gaps are a vital marker of change. It's absolutely fundamental. So for me, establishing those key metrics, how can we see if we're making progress? We always say what measures gets measured gets done. That for me is vital. Measuring the right things. Employee surveys as well. We conduct a survey that we call our Belong survey. Sharon obviously mentioned a piece that she does in her organization as well. Understanding employee opinions, getting ideas as well, seeing change, seeing improvement. Do our employees have a sense that our leadership is bought into it? Are they seeing us move the dial? Are we becoming a more inclusive organization? All those kind of things are absolutely vital in terms of getting a set of metrics that are really going to enable you to see, are you making progress and are things happening? So that's certainly something that I feel really, really passionate about. I think also employees are going to sniff out quite quickly if a CEO is truly authentic in their belief and whether they're behind all this. It's going to be pretty easy for them to tell. So what are you doing as a senior leader, as a CEO, to actually make things happen? Are you volunteering for the right courses? Are you educating yourself in these issues? And how are you actually holding team members accountable for making it happen? You know, certainly we have accountability at kind of a corporate group level, so a bit more of a top down, but how can we get accountability right from the bottom up as well? So all of our business units in every market need to create a diversity and inclusion action plan in IPSOS, and you've really got to attack it from every angle, you know, from the group level, from the corporate level, from the divisional level, from the team level. Can you include objectives in people's performance reviews? You know, those kind of things as well. So what are the kind of softer pieces and also the more kind of measurable pieces that can be done as a CEO, as a leader, to really affect this change and make it happen? So that's, you know, I guess they're pieces that, you know, for CEOs, as well as signing up for the pledge, I think are going to be really, really important.
So that thing about measuring and tracking, and obviously that are the outcomes, but also seeding it into performance conversations and general, you know, performance metrics. This is, I guess, part of your review. Thank you very much. Sharon, any other things?
Yeah, I know we're getting close to the end of our panel. I really want to emphasize that point about authenticity of leaders. As Andrew was talking about, you know, why now, you know, why important, you know, alongside activism, for me, activism comes through authenticity. And you said it, Joe. I just, and that's authenticity at every level. And so what does that mean? For me, that means, what do I try and do every day to have an impact? And it can be really small things as well as the big things. So I taking action every day, authenticity as a leader, taking action every day. And then I think you have to, as a leader, you have to listen, you have to learn, and you have to take action. I think that, you know, just, you know, because I know we haven't got time, that would be my summary. And Rita, I do think that businesses can change the world. So let's write the book, because I do think they can.
Okay. Well, I'd be very open to, you know, co-writers on that one. I'm going to come to Andrew for the last words here, please, on
no
advice.
Pressure at all.
No.
Well, I'm up for a chapter as well, to be honest, because I happen to believe that you can run an unbelievably successful business and do a lot of good at the same time. So I'm in, as they say. I'm going to be slightly boring and again rehash the idea of authenticity and leadership. It's so desperately important, and as Joe said, people will sniff out a lack of authenticity, and you know, leaders should bring their true selves to work as well. It's something that's not always focused upon, but you know, you were kind enough in a fun moment to point out my 8-legged decompression machine. But I think it's important, because by putting that narrative out on LinkedIn, by pushing that narrative internally, the reason that one of my children is inherited is that we're second time arounders. I don't see my children as much as I would like to. And everybody here knows that there is nothing that's going to stop me going home on time on a Tuesday. Work will wait, because that's my day with my kids. And that sets the example, but gives people permission to run their work lives in the same way. Two other points from me. You, at the start of your intro to this session, you talked about people being worried about speaking up and getting punched, I think was the term that you used. And it's analogous to that hackneyed, but it's still very, very correct business cliche around the what if we train people and they leave, or what if we don't train people and they stay? If you speak out, yeah, you might get punched. But what if you don't speak out and your people feel like they're getting punched, your business is getting punched? Just speak out. And in a world that I think is becoming increasingly tolerant of verbiage and is starting to see underneath that and see intention, direction and authenticity, not only is speaking out with all of those things in mind very important, and I think you're less likely to get punched, but actually there's a really good journey and dialogue internally and probably internally within yourself in terms of, should I speak out about this thing? Why am I speaking out about this thing? Am I virtue signaling? Is this the right thing to speak out on? And as with a million facets of business, the journey can be more important than the destination.
Fantastic final words there. Look, I need to wrap this up, but a huge thank you to what inspiring thoughts, insightful conversation. I do hope that our listeners have been energized by all that. So a huge thank you to you. For our audience, please don't forget to tag Dial Global. Use the social media handle #MovingTheDial. Please do join us after this short break to hear from an incredible panel speaking on new leadership behaviors, taking bold, brave, and authentic action. That word again. So anyway, we'll look forward to the book emerging. Again, thanks so much for your time and huge insights and inspiration. Thank you.